Okay, so today I'm going to be making the case for you to stop calling SBLOs, Small Business Liaison Officers. It might sound a little like I'm hammering into them or something, but it's not. I'm trying to give you alternate paths than one single path we sometimes hear about, right? We sometimes hear that in order to get into a large prime, you got to go through the SBLO, or you should call the SBLO, the Small Business Liaison Officer. And but the reality is, if you understand sales funnels, right? Hopefully you know what a funnel looks like, right? It's wide at the top and it narrows down at the bottom. And the idea is, if you're calling just an SBLO, you're just calling one possible entry into a large prime instead of many in there. And when you do call SBLOs, it's as if you flipped the funnel over and your entrance into the large prime contractor that you want to work with is narrowed down into that one person, that one role. And so one person there is you're hoping that they will deliver the results that you hope that you're aiming for, right? But if you keep that funnel the way it should be, you should have lots of people in there, and that's what we're going to talk about today. For 99.9% of us, I would suggest calling SBLOs, Small Business Liaison Officers, is not the best path to success. I am going to give you what I think is the best path for success. Sometimes, and I don't know if I've got this farther in my slides, I forget what I put in my slides, but sometimes I think people forget when we're thinking about SBLOs, we sometimes forget that SBLOs have a lot of responsibility. They work for the large prime contractors' needs. They don't work for my needs as a small business. They don't sit around going, oh, Neil showed up, let me help him get whatever he wants. No, they're working on behalf of the large prime. And so sometimes that aligns with you and sometimes it doesn't. But when you start going after many different entry points into a large prime, you're going to find a lot more success. This might jive a little differently from what you hear from other people, but this is why if you read my entry on the LinkedIn training today, it says the people who don't do sales will tell you to go knock on the SBLO doors. And those of us who do sales right now, every single day, I help my customers in the workshop get into new doors, new agencies, new teaming partners. And what I'll teach you is the same path, right? It's this proven process to getting in the door, and it's not through one person, one entry point. Okay, so today we're going to be talking again about stop calling those SBLOs. And really, the idea behind this is I want to give you other things you can do instead of just calling one person. And by the way, as you go along, just equate the large prime with an agency and the SBLO with a small business specialist. I want to break up today's training into three things. Why calling the SBLOs is just a wasted effort on your part and my part, right? And the second thing is, who should you call? If I'm telling you don't call this person, it's a waste of time, right? And I don't mean a person right away, I mean the role. But if I say that's not what you should be doing, well, what should you be doing? Who should you be calling? I'm going to tell you who that is. And then I'm going to give you an example. Here I just pulled out BAE. They're a huge federal large prime contractor doing $7 billion plus in contracts in last fiscal year alone, right? So they're huge. I'm going to show you who I would be looking at. And then how do you approach these large primes? I'm going to give you some ideas of what to do to increase the likelihood that those large primes are going to listen to you and talk to you. Okay, if you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I want to welcome you to my federal sales training where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner before starting the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. And I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret, it's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we have repeatable, predictable results. And this is what I want for you. It's what I teach around how to get in the door to large prime contractors, right? There's a process that you follow. It's not overly complicated. And when we follow that process over and over again, we're going to have repeatable, predictable success on getting into the agency or the large primes or even other teaming partners that we want to. If you haven't done so already, I'm really excited. Over the weekend, we passed 15,000 subscribers on the Government Contracting Success newsletter. This is our newsletter that we put out and share just a ton of valuable information. So for example, yesterday's weekly issue was on, it shared a lot of information about the training, about federal agency budgets and some strategic plans or industry days, excuse me, in there. And so you want to subscribe to that. One of the big things to remember is that the bigger our audience, our community is, the more we attract federal buyers to us. And so this is a small business community within the government contracting space. It's the whole reason the government contracting or GovCon Chamber of Commerce exists, is to help small business government contractors succeed in the federal market. And one of the ways we do that is coming together constantly to attract the very buyers we want to reach out to and talk to. Last thing, I just want to say thank you to those of you who registered for training. I think we had almost 150 people registered for training. We're going to have probably over 400 people live in training. I bet if some of you are able to look at the numbers, you'll see it's getting close up there. We've got people on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook as well. Make sure you register for training. When you register for training, first off, it's an easy thank you to me and my team for this training, but also LinkedIn will push the word out to other people. Okay, so let's get diving into the meat of the training. If you haven't been here before, I move at a fire hose pace. The slides should be pretty clear as we go along. Take a screenshot if you want. But as we go along, I'll move pretty fast because we end at 12:30 and I always end on time. I wanted to just begin with why I'm saying calling small business liaison officers, SBLOs, is a wasted effort on your part. And one thing I put here, the very first bullet that you should pay attention to is I'm talking about the role, not the person. Right? So there's individual heroes out there, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just the role of small business liaison officer. By very definition, they're a gatekeeper, not really a liaison. If they're a liaison, they would liaison me into the program office of the shop that I want to get into. But they tend to be more of a gatekeeper to see if we're worthy of their time or worthy of the large prime's time. And it kind of makes sense, right? There's so few of them. They've got massive amount of responsibilities that they're doing all this work. First off, probably half their time is spent on non-engagement with industry. And then there's thousands of us coming in, right? And some of us are coming in completely unprepared. And so we waste these small business liaison officers' times by not even having talked to a PTAC or an SBDC counselor before approaching a large prime, right? There's a time to approach a large time. And often these SBLOs are getting contacted by those of us who are not ready. And other times, they just don't know how to move out, right? And we'll come back to that in a second. I said this already, but I just want to reemphasize bullet 2 here, where I'm pointing out that they're there to support their own company's needs, right? So Booz Allen has SBLOs. Those SBLOs are there to serve Booz Allen's need. Booz Allen didn't say, hey, I want to help a bunch of woman-owned small businesses or veteran-owned small businesses build and succeed. Let me create this role and do whatever they need. No, they said, we have small business plans we need to implement. We want to look to grow our supplier base for our own needs, to fill our own holes, whatever it is, right? So they created this SBLO role to fill the need of the large primes. And it's really important to remember that, because when we see that, then we realize those SBLOs don't work for us. They work for the large prime. And what we want to do is to be so attractive, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but so attractive to that large prime that our company is invited in. That's when you know you're ready, really. This third thing about SBLOs is they have no need of their own. They're what I call a focus of receptivity, and that's only if they're willing to talk with you, right? And people can have a whole debates on whether that really happens a lot in industry. Happens one-off for sure, but whether it happens a lot. But they have no need of their own, meaning they don't have a contract that they're running with the Navy. They're not the program manager. They're not filling out the needs. They're not part of the capture team, right? Sometimes they're brought along and sometimes they're individuals who do things. But for the most part, and I have talked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of large prime salespeople, business developers, et cetera, who generally don't look to the SBLO for that particular need. They look to other places, and I'll talk about that. But they have no need of their own. So we're going to them trying to get somewhere else. Why don't we just go somewhere else? Like, why don't we just go around to the back door and say, hi? You know? The fourth thing here is that they barely know their company's business developers, capture, proposal people, or program managers doing the work. And I don't say this just out of casual conversation. I have had numerous conversations over the last 6 years, probably over 1,000 conversations with salespeople within large primes, right? I got one right now that I'm pushing with billion-dollar firm. It's in the IT space. And I talk to them. I say, do you use the SBLOs? No, not really. If I have a need, I have a weekly meeting with other business developers. I talk to them. If I don't find what I'm looking for, we usually just turn to the to LinkedIn and places like that, right? So these SBLOs don't know the thousands. And I'm going to talk to you. How could they know? There's just too many people within a large prime that you want to reach for these SBLOs to maintain that relationship. They can try to pass you through, but they don't really know people. And again, I know I'm coming down hard on SBLOs, but what I really want to do is be saying, you need to take responsibility for getting into the large prime and not put that responsibility on the SBLOs. Otherwise, they're in control of your success, not you. And the last thing here, I said this already, but SBLOs just have thousands of small businesses reaching out to them. There's 300,000 of us, so I don't know how many reach out on an annual base to SBLOs, but a lot of them, right? And so when you think about all that activity that's on them, this is why I say they're gatekeepers. They're not really liaisons that are helping us in there. But there are other ways to do this. And this is who I think you should call at Large Prime Contractors. So just coming down, I've got 7 different titles here that I'm using. So business developers, by the way I describe sales, federal sales, if you haven't heard me say this, you got business developers who are trying to drum up opportunities, capture people who shape it, and proposal managers who are sending the response. That's a very simplified way of doing it. But my point is they have different kind of roles. I have a friend who's over in Ohio. He's got like a $1 or $2 billion sales goal just at the Air Force. He's a business developer. He doesn't even do the capture part of it. His job is to really find and shape the opportunities and then put them into the pipeline so somebody else really pursue, a whole bunch of people then pursue it, right? So business developers, these are the ones who are walking the hallways, so to speak. Capture managers, these are the people with opportunities. Their job is to push these opportunities forward and increase the P-win through their activity, their capture activity. You want to be reaching out to those people. Subcontract managers. And so this title can mean different things, but basically what I'm saying is that on a large contract, let's say a $500 million contract, there's definitely a subcontracts manager who is responsible for managing all the subcontracts that Large Prime is dishing out. Whether those subcontracts are to other larges or to smalls, it doesn't matter. There's somebody who's got that role. On contract vehicles, which I'll talk about on number 6, it's the same thing. They sometimes have subcontract managers in there or teaming partners, et cetera. Number 4, proposal managers. I work with Large Prime proposal managers, and at different points, they're influencing the teaming activity that goes on. They certainly can introduce you to capture and BD people because they all talk around, let's say if they're all supporting the Navy initiatives. And so proposal managers you could reach out and talk to. Contract managers and contract vehicle program managers, to me, those are in the same area. I should have flipped them. But on contract vehicles that Large Primes have, I'm trying to stop a sneeze. I've never sneezed live in 500 videos. But contract managers and contract vehicle program managers, they manage like Oasis or Seaport Next Gen for Booz Allen or Leidos or whoever, right? They manage those vehicles. They don't manage the work on the vehicles. That's number 7, the task order program managers. Somebody who's doing the work is the program manager there. But contract vehicle program managers manage those vehicles and track it through the 5 and 10 year life cycle. And there's a contract manager in there as well. So these 7 people are people you can call instead of the SBLO. These people will get you in the door. I used to describe this, and I wish I had put a picture up, but I used to describe it as if you're trying to get into a house or a building, the SBLO is the front door. Everybody says go knock on the front door. It's like, okay, but if you're not getting access through the front door, there's a side door that leads to the garage or whatever. There's a back door that leads to the backyard. There's windows. You can jump up on the second floor. There's a little balcony with double wide doors going in there. It's a little creepy maybe, but you have all these doors you could go in. And if you're trying to get into a house, and that's what you're trying to do when you're trying to get into a large prime contractor to build a relationship to grow with them, don't just stop at the one door you tried, right? Try the other doors. And these 7 people represent those doors. Let me show you what these 7 people look like in reality with a company called BAE Systems. And BAE Systems has over 100,000 employees. In the US, they have 31,000 employees, right? These guys did $7.7 billion in FY 2023 just in contract awards. And by the way, that's not all they did. I just picked 2 on USA Spending. I can grab different data. I just picked their 2 most important ones that align to what I look at. But they have other subsidiaries that are aligned with this that are also in there. But $7 billion, that's a lot. And if you think about the average large business, generally has to subcontract out 30%. It's not a hard, fast rule. I'm not here to debate that, but I'm just saying 30% of $7 billion is a lot, right? What is that, $2 billion going out? And so you want to be talking to the people who are out there doing that, and you don't want to be going through just one person. So anyways, 31,000 employees in the US. 26,000 of those are on LinkedIn. We're all here on LinkedIn, except for our friends over on YouTube, Twitter and Facebook. By the way, come over to LinkedIn. This is where we can have dialogues. You can network with people. And so here, of those 26,000 that are on LinkedIn, what I did on the next bunch of tabs, and I should have indented them, is I showed you, I did a search on the company and the title that they have. So 2,200 people have the title proposal, the proposal managers, et cetera. As I come down, 2,000 people have a role of business developer. And so, or business development. This is huge. Their title is business development. And you could do all this searching on your end, your own. You can pick a large prime and figure it out. Contract managers. Remember, I talked about large contract vehicles have contract managers and contract vehicle program managers. Well, 590 of the people who are on LinkedIn in BAE are saying they're contract managers. That's basically like an SBLO within a contract, a set of contract vehicles, et cetera. And again, this is high level. You begin to filter that 590 down into the right ones. But what if that was 50, right? What if 590 whittled down to 50 perfect people that you'd love to reach out to, right? It begins to become real. Capture management, right? All I did is put capture in 491, capture in the title, right? Not in the job description, but title, 491 came back. And that's an interesting thing, right? You see 2,000 are in business development. There's all these people out, retired admirals and captains coming out and selling back into the Navy, and same thing in other places. A lot of people out there generating business development. And then you've got 491 listed as doing capture. And by the way, I'm not doing some factual information about BAE. I'm just saying on LinkedIn for this company, this many people have this title on their profile. So subcontract, that was a big one for me. 489 people have subcontract as their job. And the last one I showed before I went to the SBLOs is 263 have a title recruiter. I know a ton of companies out there that are staffing companies. I would be looking out there and building relationships, and I might allude to this later as a next step, but I would be building relationships with those recruiters. First I would just start warming it up, see if I could establish them into my network. Then I would begin to figure out, how can I knock on the doors? How can I help them recruit for their large prime? My last business, I built a ton of revenue off of working for companies like Booz Allen. That was my huge one. But at some point, that thing just started generating almost $1 million out of like a quarter, a brand new million to our annual revenue, because they saw what we could do and move forward. But first, it starts with getting in the door. How do you get in the door? Well, with these recruiters, as an example, is one way you can do that if you're a staffing firm. If I was doing business development, which I'm doing for a lot of our customers, I would be looking at business developers and going, which ones are doing it in my agency? Compare all of these numbers that I just shared with what you see on the small business. If I go into BAE with 26,000 employees on LinkedIn, only 21 people have the title or have a job title that includes the words small business. So like Small Business Liaison Officer, right? And there's actually some of those 21 probably aren't even small business folks. There's something else and they just had it in their title. But this is huge. And what I want you to do is, and I'll probably say this again at the end, right, is go to LinkedIn right after this call. Just have your lunch or your coffee, go to LinkedIn and pick one large prime that you want to go after and do this same exercise. You could use these same words. When I talk about our workshop is visibility, targeting, and outreach. Targeting is about building a list of 1 to 200 people. And sometimes people go, oh, how can you do that? Well, right here, right? I mean, you can see it's not hard to build a list of 200 people to call in at BAE or Army or wherever I want to go. The hard part is picking up the phone and calling, right? But building the list is actually pretty straightforward. And LinkedIn is a great way to get going on it. There's other ways I've taught, by the way. You can go search in my previous training and you can go look up the words large prime in my previous training. I've done over 400 trainings in the last 2 years. Look large prime and you'll find 5 or 10 other videos that talk about how to go into large primes in different ways. Today is a different angle on it. One last thing before I move off this slide, do me a favor. I just used BAE as an example. What large prime contractor would you want to get into? Put that in the chat, right? And if you're able to tag them, that's even better for me, because then I can just click and go through afterwards. But let me see in the comments. What I'll try to do is start sharing out a little bit more information about the most popular larges that you want to get into. So if you and 30 other people want to get into a particular large, I'll go share more information on how to get in there. Okay, so this last slide, I want to share just some tips on how to approach large prime contractors, right? And I begin with be ready and attractive, and I mean your company. Your company needs to be ready to work with a large prime contractor, and it needs to be attractive to that large prime. I say that there's three ways to make money in the federal market: small business subcontracting, priming with an agency, and subcontracting with the large prime. And it goes in that order because it's so much easier to subcontract with a firm that's doing 20 million or less. Then agencies are more willing to take risks with you as a small business than large primes. Large primes are looking for companies that pretty much are risk-free, right? There's no such thing as risk-free totally, but that's what they want. That's what they need because they have such a low risk threshold. And so you want to be ready and attractive. And I just wanted to give you some tips or some ideas on how you can do that. And there's all sorts of other ways you can learn from large prime. Anytime you talk to somebody, ask them, hey, what's the top 3 things you look for in a teaming partner? That's my favorite because they'll tell you exactly what you're looking for. But one of the things they're looking for is have a niche, right? Don't come in and say we do everything because the large prime does everything. And when they look at you and they go, how can you do everything? We're barely doing everything, right? Have a niche. We do artificial intelligence. We do flooring, right? If you're in construction, we do risk management framework or ATOs. Have something specific that they can see and say, okay, I see it. You're the, for us, my last company was SharePoint. You're the SharePoint guys. Perfect. Thanks. That's what I want you to see us as. And just give us money, right? And the idea is you want to be coming in with a niche of something they either don't do or they don't want to do. So an example of something they don't do is, especially if you think along the lines of machine learning and artificial intelligence, it is just moving at such a breakneck speed. This is a perfect time for smalls to be completely ahead of the larges and agencies because you are nimble and you're experts, right? So you can bring in an expertise they don't do. They would love that because they can figure out how to fit you into their team. The second thing is do what they don't want to do. An example is anything that's low profit margin or low rates. They don't really want to do admin support. They'd probably be happy to outsource anything that's typical admin support, receptionists or schedulers on a project, et cetera. It doesn't mean those are the only things we're going to get, but there's a lot more willingness to probably push that out than their high-level subject matter experts that they have themselves, right? And so think about what they don't want to do as well. That's just a different way of approaching with a niche. The third bullet I have here, right? When you're trying to think about how to approach an agency and be attractive, is to be working inside an agency already. We call this agency intimacy. You understand, you have an intimate knowledge of the agency. You have researched them. You have met with them. Sometimes it could be an advantage that you're actually coming from an agency. I got a customer who the 2 founders are both Army folks. And so they come out of the Army. They have a knowledge of the Army. They actually have knowledge of specific base in general or type of work, right? It's important to be able to bring that back because when you're talking with large primes, you're able to say that. Fourth bullet, have agency relationships that they value. And so if they're trying to get into program offices and you're in there and you're doing some work, make sure you're building your own relationships in there. So when you start talking to the large primes and you want to get in the door and work, and you want to talk to one of those 7 folks I mentioned, then you can talk about the relationships you have. I was talking to the chief data officer at NAVC, if that exists, right? But I was talking with the chief data officer at NAVC, and they were talking about this, and I wanted to find out if we might work together to start solving their problems. Now you're bringing something they didn't have. You're bringing something that they value. They're like, oh, cool, we're not having those conversations. And then have 3 past performances in an agency. So if you have a niche, the easiest way to demonstrate that you have that niche is that you've been paid for it multiple times, right? So when you're talking about going to a large prime, you should have a fairly good amount of past performance. If you're still getting started, you should be subbing with smalls. But when you're ready to go to large primes, you should be able to even bring that past performance into a target agency. Like in the Navy, this is where we're going. I'm working with the customers going into the Army. And this year, their goal is to go in and build up that Army past performance experience. And then following year, their plan is to really push into larges that are already in the Army, or maybe some that are trying to get in. I just shared a couple of weeks ago, another billion-dollar firm was looking for companies like yours to help them get into the Air Force and to help with them work with the Air Force. So when you have experience, when you have knowledge, et cetera, they're going to, about an agency, they're going to value what you're bringing. So you can either bring the agency or the niche that you have, or the agency intimacy and knowledge that you have. So the last two bullets are about your back office, right? The other ones were about business development, let's say in sales. But the last two bullets are around the back office. Large primes in particular really need you to be a stable company. They don't want to be able to bring you on as a subcontractor and then find out you're not able to pay your employees, so they quit because you didn't have financial ducks in a row. And so here I put, have your financial and process ducks in a row. They want to see that if they work with you and you're going to get several positions on a contract or tens of positions, right? I just had somebody, one of my customers just picked up like, I don't know, it was like 50 people at least, right? It was like a $70 million contract. So I'm trying to do the math in my head. The point is, what they want to see is, how are you able to staff up these people? If somebody quits, how fast can you backfill them? How fast can you bring in new people? And they talk about their process. They have a very good process. So they want, large primes want to see your financial stability. They want to see that you can execute on the work that they're agreeing to share with you. And then I put out certs that demonstrate back office maturity. This is CMMI. CMMC is on its way. Right now is the time to be looking at it. ISO certifications. These are all typical good certifications for organizations to demonstrate that we do believe in and follow a process that drives towards success. Larges see that as things that reduce the risk because you're thinking like they think. And so that's really important when you think about how to approach a large prime. Just remember, we need to make sure our company is ready and attractive to reach out. I just told you who you could reach out and how you can find them on LinkedIn, but make sure you're ready when you go in. Make sure you know what your story is going to be. I want to leave you with just a couple of things to remember, a few next steps. If you're really focused on going into a large and you put maybe somebody in the chat like Booz Allen or Leidos or whoever, pick one large prime contractor, one large prime federal contractor. And in this case, by the way, I mean $1 billion plus kind of a firm. There's a lot of larges that are 40 million plus, but that's a different story than today. Pick one very large prime contractor and then search for them on LinkedIn. This is what I want you to do, is go into LinkedIn, and I'm sorry I'm not showing you, but I'm just running out of time, but go into LinkedIn and type in the company name like BAE Systems. When you type it in, it brings back the results. Filter the results by posts. And when you do, you'll see all these posts and just start engaging in those posts daily for 30 days, 15 minutes a day. And you will see that you start getting in the door. You will start building early relationships with people in that large prime just by you engaging their stuff. Don't even ask for anything for 30 days. But when you do that, you will earn the right to ask later on. Okay, hopefully you found this valuable. Remember, register for the training. We've got 4 more trainings coming up this week, a lot of good ones, including another large prime one. If you'd like me or my team's help on your acceleration into agencies of business development, reaching out into large primes, check out our website, govconchamber.com. You can learn about our workshop over there. For all of us, as we move forward, just remember, government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.